So now I can put on this microphone. Hopefully that means that they will record it. I'm probably going to have to fill out some paperwork, though, to have them release this audio to you, and I have no idea how long it's going to take. Hopefully it's a quick turnaround. But take good notes in case it doesn't get turned around by the time the exam shows up. Yeah. The date, time, and location of the final. I believe it's in Wheeler Hall. I don't remember the room. It's at 8 a.m., and it's on Wednesday the 17th. Is that right, 8 a.m.? Yeah. Okay, and it's in Wheeler Hall, which there's some room, I don't know. Sorry? 150. That will be on a slide next week, hopefully. Any other questions? Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Berkeley Seismological Lab. This is McCone Hall. Oh, I have a laser pointer somewhere. This is McCone Hall, so this is where your GSIs and your professors spend the vast majority of our time. Got some nice trees outside. Great. So, but more importantly, it's a research lab for earthquake processes monitoring and earth structure. So here's the mission. There are 4 key components to the mission of the Seismological Lab. The number one thing we do is fundamental research. So we want to understand how the Earth works. We want to understand everything that has to do with earthquakes and what earthquakes can tell us about fundamental processes within the Earth. The next thing that we do is provide hazard information. So we give very good information and very fast information after an earthquake has happened. We provide a lot of data to the U.S. Geological Survey, who then pushes that data back out to the public. And we'll see that in a few minutes. The third thing we do is broad education. This class is an example of the education that we do. We like to go out and tell people about earthquake hazards and the Earth because it's a cool place to live. And professional operation. So this is just the part of the mission statement that says that we're not joking around, I guess. We're a professional operation, and we want to make sure that our conduct is professional. All right, so it's a research unit within UC Berkeley. It is not a department. It's kind of a unique part of the institution. There are 50 affiliated faculty, staff, and students, so there are 50 people who work there, which is not that big, realistically. California is a big state, and there are only 50 of us. Funding comes from the U.S. government, the state government. It comes from foundations like the Moore Foundation and UC Berkeley, obviously. And then the research money comes primarily from federal grants, but a lot of other places also. So the history of the Seismological Lab is pretty great. In 1887, we put the first seismograph in the Western Hemisphere. So this is right at the beginning of when people began to realize that they could record the ground motions with any kind of accuracy at all. They put a few stations in Europe, and in 1887, we put the first one here in the Western Hemisphere. In 1906, as we learned in this class after the 1906 earthquake, the Lawson report was written by a professor here, Berkeley Professor Lawson, and that is thought of as the birth of modern seismology. This is when we began to understand that earthquakes happen on faults, right, which is kind of important. And it was the first really, really detailed analysis of what happened during and after an earthquake. And pretty much everything that was mentioned in that report, when an earthquake happens in modern times, we sort of follow the format, just because the format is that good. So 1961, the Worldwide Standardized Seismographic Network, which we learned about was, why was WWSSN built? Does anyone remember that? Important? Yeah. During the wars, the Cold War specifically, the United States wanted to make sure that we knew exactly where and how big the Soviets' bombs were. So we helped create a worldwide standardized seismographic network. And one of the stations is right here. It's that way, about 150 meters. So pretty close, pretty nice. In 1991, we began the first continuous digital broadband network in the US. So it used to be that you would record earthquakes on pieces of paper, and then if I wanted to research a particular seismogram, I would write a letter to an observatory, and they would mail me a microfiche of some event. It's gotten a lot better. Right now I just go on the internet and I say I want this thing. And that was started, at least in the US, it was started by us. We started keeping continuous data, and it was digital. And then in 2012, we had the first automated response to earthquake alerts, that being BART, right? We have an earthquake alert, earthquake early warning, puts out an alert, BART trains stop automatically without human intervention from this automated alert. So we do lots of pretty cool stuff here. We've done lots of pretty cool stuff in history in the past, and hopefully we'll continue to do some pretty cool things. So Mount Hamilton, this is the first seismographic instrument in the Western Hemisphere. Does this look like a seismographic recording that we have seen before? It looks kind of weird, right? So what this is, they would have these glass plates, and they would hold a fire under the glass plates so that it smoked the glass, right? The glass became opaque because it collected all the soot from whatever was burning underneath it. And then that plate would spin very slowly above a needle that was on the plate. And then the needle would move and scratch off the smoke. And that's what you're looking at. And so they would do that, and then when it got to the end of the plate, they would clean it off and then burn it again and then start their seismographic recording. So this is the 1906 earthquake recorded by one of those glass plates. We have a lot easier time figuring out what's going on these days. But this red star, this is Mount Hamilton. That's where Mount Hamilton is. It was placed at Mount Hamilton because now it's really easy to have a really accurate clock, right? But then there weren't really very accurate clocks, right? There was no atomic clock. No one really knew about atoms very well at that point. So no atomic clocks. The most precise clocks were at observatories, right? Because they were tracking the stars with high precision. And by tracking the stars, you know exactly what time it is. So the observatory, the astronomical observatory at Mount Hamilton, was the best clock in the Bay Area. So we said, all right, let's put our seismographic station there. Great. So a short movie. So this is going to show you the network that UC Berkeley currently runs. If it starts, it's moving. Yeah, okay, good. So this red line is the San Andreas Fault, the northern segment of San Andreas. And the blue thing is McCone. So we're here, and that's McCone. Great. Okay, so now we're going to zoom out. This might make you a little seasick. It kind of makes me seasick. But okay, so these blue dots are broadband surface seismic stations. We'll talk about broadband in a moment. That's a particular type of station. Another thing that we operate, GPS stations. These green dots are all GPS. And then the third main type of instrument that we operate is called a borehole seismic station. So that's a seismometer that's deep within a hole drilled into bedrock. And that's what these pink dots are. So this is going to look at a couple of interesting places. This is McCone. I think first we're going to fly to the Farallon Islands. How many of you have seen the Farallon Islands from somewhere high up? Yeah, so we have a station on the Farallon Islands. It's kind of difficult to get to because it's a national wildlife refuge, but it's a good place for a seismic station because it's on the Pacific Plate. The next one, this one's interesting. Yes, we just went underwater. This is station MOBB. That white line that you see there is a cable that runs from this station, which is underwater back to Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. So we get real-time data from an underwater station, which is pretty awesome. And this is just showing you the canyon, I guess. I don't know. And the next thing that we are going to fly to, I think, is a GPS station. Yeah, GPS only station at the tip of Point Reyes. Point Reyes Lighthouse or something like that. This is not a seismometer, just a GPS station, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it's a nice, great place to have one. I think this is the last one we go to. This is Oroville Dam. There was an earthquake here when they filled this dam, so we put a seismometer nearby. It's very nice as long as they're not dumping a bunch of water over the dam, releasing a bunch of water. If they're releasing water, then it gets really, really noisy. Okay, there's Nevada, and we're back here. I'm going to stop this movie now because it shows some earthquake damage, which we all know a lot about. I don't really want to get into the dark stuff again. Okay, so core infrastructure. We have the first thing that we looked at was the Berkeley Digital Seismic Network. So it's a co-located broadband velocity seismometer and an accelerometer. Broadband velocity accelerometers are extremely precise. So if the ground moves up and down, like 1% the width of one of your hairs, this station will pick it up. That's pretty amazing, I think. It's kind of amazing that we have an instrument that is precise enough to do that. So that's what the broadband velocity seismometer can do. It detects things that are extraordinarily small. So what happens if we have a giant earthquake and that station moves up and down this much? Anyone have any idea? Who thinks it would be able to record that type of ground motion also? We're talking 1 meter versus probably 10 to the minus 7 meters is the width, 1% the width of your hair. That's a huge order of magnitude difference, right? So a broadband velocity seismometer will clip if it moves too fast. Clipping just basically means that, you could think of it as we have a pen that's drawing on a little piece of paper, and that pen, the arm is only so long, so the pen can only go back and forth so much, right? And eventually, if the paper moves too much, the pen is just not going to be able to record that ground motion. So effectively, that's what happens to these very broadband velocity seismometers. They're really good at picking up very small motions. The big motions, not so much. So that's why we have an accelerometer. Accelerometers are very good at picking up these very, very large ground motions. Yeah. Why do we need to record small movement? So if that's a good question. If you're just interested in large magnitude earthquake hazard in California, you don't really need this small motion. That's actually not true. In assignment 4, did anyone get any magnitude 8 earthquakes in their data set? I hope not, because there haven't been any. But you all were able to calculate a recurrence interval, right? And you calculated that recurrence interval primarily based on small magnitude earthquakes. So we want to be able to capture very, very small motions so that we can determine where these very small earthquakes are. Additionally, if a magnitude 5 earthquake happens in Japan, our network can still pick that up. We can see the P waves all the way clear on the other side of the world from a relatively small earthquake because we can pick up such small motions. So we want to just pick up the smallest motion we possibly can. And it turns out that like waves crashing against the shore sort of limit how low down we can see, how small amplitudes we can see. Because we can see, if you come to office hours and look at that big screen that just is like 4 days of continuous seismic data, if you come after a storm, you can see that the noise increases. What you're looking at is actually waves hitting either the continental shelf or the beach, and that seismic energy is moving to the station. So that sort of limits how much we can see. And if we can capture that, then we can capture anything that we want to. So that's the idea. We want both big motions and small motions because we really want to understand the total of what's going on inside the Earth. So the next thing is borehole networks. So it's low noise accelerometers. We put them way deep down into the Earth. Exactly why is not, it's sort of debated. It's perhaps less noisy. It's also probably closer to where the earthquakes are happening, but they're a lot more expensive, so we don't have a whole lot of borehole seismic stations. Real-time GPS. So GPS samples very, very, very long period motion, i.e. if I move across this room very slowly and it takes me a year to get across this room, seismic station is not going to be able to record that kind of movement. But GPS does. So GPS is good for learning about how these plates are moving, and then we can get strain rates and that kind of thing, like we've talked about in the class. And then we've got this one ocean bottom seismometer that's this yellow guy right here, which is cool because it's under the water, I guess. So what do you notice about the distribution of the stations that we have in California? Is it uniform? Yeah, okay, so they tend to lie near the faults. The San Andreas runs sort of like this. The Hayward Fault runs here. The Calaveras Fault runs here. Yeah, so there are fewer as you go to the east. Yeah, so one is that, yeah, we definitely want it on the fault. But another thing, we don't have a whole lot up here along the San Andreas, the northern part of San Andreas, north of the Bay Area. So I would argue that this is very dense because that's where all the people live, right? We want to have very precise data of where the population centers of California are because that's part of our mission is to try to have hazard-related information distributed to the public. But perhaps one thing that threw you off is that, right? What is here? Is that a big city? Parkfield. Did someone say Parkfield? Wow, nice. Okay, yeah, that's Parkfield. So this is, back in the 80s when we thought maybe we could predict an earthquake. So we put a bunch of stations there and then ended up not being able to predict it. But yeah, so that's what the distribution of the stations, that's why it looks like that. Lots of people live here. Approximately 14 people live here, but we thought we could predict an earthquake. Okay. So this is the full state of California. Up here is the green stuff is what the USGS runs. The red stuff is what we run. The red stations are about as high quality as you get in the United States, which is about as high quality as you get in the world, I guess. The blue stuff down here in Southern California is run by Caltech and the United States Geological Survey in conjunction. They don't keep their networks separate down there like we do up here. They have much broader station distribution, I guess in part because the population is a lot more spread out, and in part because there are tons of faults down here that they don't really know exactly where they are. And so trying to figure out exactly what the seismic hazard is in the Bay Area is hard enough. It's even harder down in Southern California. Okay, another thing on the right is something we have already seen. Okay, questions about the network we run? Yes? Why does Berkeley keep their data different from the green USGS stations? That's a good question. I'm not totally sure. I don't know. Maybe we're better at it. Maybe we're worse at it. I have no idea. Any other questions? Okay, real-time location. So I pulled this off of the website last night, I guess, so it's not super real-time, but this website is real-time. This shows you where the earthquakes have happened in California in the last week. So if you go to seismo.berkeley.edu, this map is like the first thing you see, which is nice. So we provide locations for all of these earthquakes and then give them to the USGS to deliver to the public. Within 30 seconds after an earthquake, we have a location. We determine a location, we figure out where the earthquake was, and then after about 90 seconds, we have an initial magnitude estimate. So within 90 seconds of an earthquake happening, it will show up on this map, which I think is pretty cool. That's pretty fast. But just the magnitude and the location of the earthquake is not all that we do. We also determine moment tensors for all earthquakes that are large enough to determine moment tensors in Northern California. So a moment tensor well, I'll talk about that in a moment. If you remember the review session, I accidentally said moment tensor, not realizing that we hadn't talked about them in class. But you'll learn briefly what a moment tensor is. So this is the Alum Rock earthquake, which was in 2007, I believe. And so we know what a focal mechanism is, right? So we have stations around an earthquake, and they either detect up first motion or down first motion. But what do you do if you have a station that gives you a conflicting report from what you think it should? You can't fit a beach ball by the up and down motions that you see. First of all, do you think this is possible? Do you think this happens very often? Yeah, it does. So this is a huge array of geophones in Southern California. They're sort of like seismometers, but they're a lot lower quality. So Ching Kai, who came and talked with you guys about his cell phone app, he worked on this project for a while. And this is an earthquake, and all of these dots, each of these dots is a station. And red means that the station had an up first motion from this earthquake, and blue means that it had a down first motion from this earthquake. So you notice there are like a bunch of red guys in the middle of this blue section, right? So that's just some stations are going to give you spurious initial motions, first motions, right? So we can see that there's probably not just going to be one of these guys. There are a whole lot of them. So something that could be even more accurate than a first motion plot, a focal mechanism, is that if we use the entire waveform, we use the whole of the wave train from the earthquake, right? So this is the Alum Rock earthquake, the thing that I just showed you. And this looks like the same first motion diagram that we've seen all through this class, right? It's just determined slightly differently. It's determined by fitting synthetic waveforms to real waveforms. So one of these lines is a computer-generated waveform, and one of the lines is what our stations actually saw. And then we get this plot, right? And it gives you the magnitude, it gives you the moment, and it gives you the orientation of the fault, and a bunch of other things that we're not going to worry about. But so we generally push out moment tensors for earthquakes that are big enough to determine them. I just said that. All right, so you get the strike of the fault and the dip of the fault, and you also get the moment. So there are a lot of moment tensors that we calculate in California. This is for the year 1993. One of the cool things that we can see with these moment tensors is something about what the regional stress field looks like. So if you see all of these moment tensors down here, what does that tell you? Just treat them like focal mechanisms. What does it tell you? Yeah. Sorry? The stress was relieved here. Yes, yeah, so it does tell you that stress was relieved. But what does it tell you about the orientation of it? What does it tell you about the type of fault? Strike slip. I heard someone say strike slip. Yeah, so there's a strike slip fault that probably runs up that side of California. And what is the sense of motion across that strike slip fault? Right lateral. Yeah, so this is showing you that there is a right lateral strike slip fault that runs all the way up there. Yeah. Yeah, so this one is not perfect because the San Andreas fault bends here, right? And so you would expect not perfect strike slip there, because what's going on here? What do we call these mountains? Not the name of the mountains, but what's the geologic feature that they are? It's 3 words, I guess hyphenated 2 words in the last word. The last one is ridge. Push-up ridge? Remember push-up ridge? So when you have a bend in a fault, and a strike slip fault, you can't have purely strike slip motion there without smashing the crust a little bit. So this is a big push-up ridge, which means that there's compressional stuff going on there. Yeah, and so this is actually showing you exactly that. It's not perfectly strike slip, that there's compression. There's a component of compression along the big bend also. It also shows you that out here we've got extension, right? Great, and then this is just 1993. We can actually look at all kinds of years. And by looking at all of these, we get a pretty good sense of how the land is deforming over the long term. Okay, we have a lot of these. Great. So we also produce, are there any questions about moment tensors? You don't need to know how to calculate them. We can go over that. Yeah. It is, yeah, the diagram is the same. It's just calculated in a slightly different way. But you should interpret them in exactly the same way. We probably won't bring up moment tensor again. But that's what they are, in case anyone's wondering. In case you go to the website and you see the term moment tensor, and you say, where's the moment tensor? Now you know. Any other questions? So another thing that Berkeley does is create a shake map. So this is the Napa earthquake. The star is the epicenter. The line is the fault rupture, how the fault ruptured. And then the colors, which we have seen before, indicate the intensity of shaking at that point. So we developed this shake map after a major earthquake or after minor earthquakes too. And it takes us about 5 minutes to come up with it. So 5 minutes after an earthquake, we can produce a map like this that can tell emergency responders and other public officials where the shaking was the worst, where the earthquake was, and where they should direct their resources. So obviously this is all changing rapidly with earthquake early warning, right? With earthquake early warning, we're hoping to do this within all 3 of these steps within a matter of seconds after the earthquake, before the majority of people even feel the shaking from the earthquake. But if you go to our website currently, you're not looking at earthquake early warning information. You're looking at this more standard seismological information. Okay, questions about this? So we'll go on to the fundamental research. We've talked a good bit about source studies. So seismology can kind of be divided broadly into 2 fields. You have the people who study the earthquakes and then assume that the waves travel through the earth in a very simple way. And then you have the people who assume that the earthquakes are very simple, and they study how the waves travel through the earth. So source studies, seismologists, tend to study earthquakes or other types of seismic sources. So when we talk about locations of earthquakes, this is a source study. Moment tensors, which we just talked about, or focal mechanisms, both of those are source studies. Discrimination, what exploded and where was it, that's a source study. Rupture processes, prediction and forecasting, which we recently talked about, and earthquake early warning, which we also recently talked about.